I'm Adam Walker, a biometrics consultant, and this is the Pharma Prescribed Podcast, where leaders, innovators, and hidden voices in healthcare open up. No sound bites, no spin, just raw insight, one prescription at a time. In an industry driven by data, protocols, and pressure, we rarely pause to ask the human questions. What drives us? What breaks us? And what truths live behind the titles we wear? Today's guest is Dr. Pat Boulogne, a performance optimization strategist, functional medicine expert, and international best-selling author with over 30 years of clinical experience. Unlike traditional approaches that start from scratch, she works with high performers who already have momentum and want to accelerate their results. Her integrative strategies help executives and leaders achieve their goals faster with greater resilience, energy, and sustainable performance. Dr. Pat, it's a delight to welcome you to Pharma Prescribed today. For those of our audience who are not familiar with you, what is the mission you're on?
Thank you very much for having me here today. I really appreciate it. And I am really looking forward to sharing some insights that I help support and elevate your group of people who listen to you. And that my main mission is to saving lives. And it's simple, it's short, and there's a lot of different ways that I look at how to accomplish that. And some of the ways are through physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, and even financial. So when I'm looking at that mission, I'm always looking at what's the solution and how do you get to the solution that is safe, quicker, and more efficient. So you're not having downtime that's solution driven and you're not getting burnt out and you don't have the noise that's sometimes around that. There's a lot of different venues of how I've done that in my career, as a physician, as a coach, as a consultant. And I've worked with professional teams. I've worked with major events like in the marathons and Special Olympics. And I'm really glad to say that nothing makes me happier than to see somebody elevate and really do their lives unapologetically.
That's a wonderful mission to start with, Dr.
Yep.
Pat. I know you have a background originally in medicine, which has
hmm
developed into all manner of different complementary therapies and holistic therapies. I wonder if you could
hmm
just elaborate about that career path that you've taken and how you got to where you are today.
One of the things is that my father wanted me to be an electrical engineer. And because I was a woman, I could name my own price for working. And I said, I never thought that was ever going to happen. And I decided to become an engineer of life and of health. And how that transpired is I went to chiropractic school. I graduated from chiropractic school, opened up a practice with my husband on Cape Cod. We excelled. We didn't just go moseying on down the road. We actually excelled very quickly. And we had a very prosperous and eventful practice with a lot of really great people. So I always think you attract people who are like yourself into those environments. So from that point of medicine, I come from an Irish neighborhood, so I have tons of stories for starters. And my mentor used to be a great storyteller, and God bless it. But as far as medicine going into alternative medicine, when I worked in University of Michigan Hospital, and I did it as an intern, so I'm not on their payroll ever, I discovered I couldn't understand how people got well. And I decided that there had to be a better, more efficient way to do that. A friend of mine went to chiropractic school and said, you should do this. You've got all the prerequisites for it, yada, yada. And I said, chiropractors are quacks. And he said, you know better than that. And then I told my father I was going to be a chiropractor, and he goes, chiropractors are quacks. And I said, you know better than that. You have a master's in engineering. And I went and I never looked back. I had my own health improved. I'm 71 years old right now, and I have tons of energy. I do not take any medications at all, and knock on wood. I take supplementation, and it's very targeted for my goals for my health and what I want to sustain. For the last 2 days, I got up at 5:30 in the morning, and I worked till 7 o'clock at night, both days in a row. And I got up today, and I've had meetings since 8 o'clock this morning. My brain sharp, and I keep my brain sharp by doing specific things. So I'm always looking for the way to do something in a more simpler fashion, something that's safer and something that you can get it done quicker. I like solving problems. I'm solution driven. And I just found that in Western medicine, I didn't see that. And when I was at the University of Michigan Hospital, I ran into people who I thought, what are you doing here? If someone told me I was going to die in 6 weeks, this is the last place I would hang out. And I've had that actual conversation with somebody one day, and that was the last day that they invited me back to be an intern. So it wasn't exactly what they wanted someone to say. But what I found over in the years is that breaking in and having conversations with Western medicine doctors, because we were like the outside the box people. I wanted to stay in the outside the box people because I saw better results there. I saw people who had results who were happier because they weren't taking medication, drugs. They did something different than going under the knife for a back and all sorts of things like that.
That's brilliant. And thank you for explaining that. Ironically, the title of the podcast is Pharma Prescribed, but what you're talking is Pharma Unprescribed, isn't it? Quite
Hmm.
literally. It's about
Yep.
taking out medicine and getting to the root cause of those symptoms and the underlying issues within patients and people. And over the years, you must have seen some incredible stories. Firstly, again, I want to compliment you. You do not look 71 years old. So, for those of our audience that are listening to this, I encourage them to watch the video because, no word of a lie, you look magnificent for 71. So, tell us your secrets. And presumably, you have some incredible stories about identifying some of those life changing opportunities for people.
One of the things is that I never underestimated my ability or being the outside of the box thinker to listen in between the lines. And what I find is that the communication issue between Western medicine and their patients and my communication with patients is I talk to them in their own language. So when I'm sitting with them from eye to eye and knee to knee and heart to heart, I'm listening to what do you got going on and what do you really got going on? You have headaches. Like, so what? You have headaches. Do you know that 85% of headaches are metabolically involved? That means something that you eat. And they're thinking, but I eat well. And I said, but what about your emotional? What's going on with you emotionally? But you got to take a look at that other aspect that's in there because if you are emotionally upset, you can have the best meal in the world and you're not going to feel good and you're not going to sleep well that night. You're going to toss and turn and that type of thing. There's a woman who recently that I just started consulting with, and she was taking some sleep meds. And she had an issue with the sleep med because she could go to sleep, but she couldn't go back to sleep. And so I did some research for her and I said, that sleep med has this other part of this, the methodology in it that I said, I think is affecting you. And I said, you might want to lower, you might ask your doctor, because I can't do it, lower the dose of it and show them this white paperwork that I'm going to give you so that you can share that. And so I saw her yesterday in this office that I'm consulting in, and she said, thank you so much. And she goes, "It's the first night I slept through," she goes, "in weeks." And she went to go see her doctor and they did some adjustment. But a lot of times people kept on saying, what's the matter? I'm giving you this. Okay, so that's not working. Let me give you another drug. And then other drugs and masking that kind of symptomatology. And people fall into that trap. How many medications are you taking? I see that all the time. I'm going, so why are you taking this one? Okay, why are you taking this one? I said, do you ever ask your pharmacist if there's contraindication for any of these? And if you ask your pharmacist or you ask your doctor, here's the right question to ask them, because if you don't ask the right question, you're not going to get the right answer. And you're making decisions upon something that might be a little bit aerated, so to speak. And when you make the decision, it's your life. You don't have 6 months extra to give to somebody else as an experiment. I don't think that way. So, how I do the things that I do, I'm primarily, when nobody was doing intermittent fasting, I was intermittent fasting. And I just thought, wow, right? And I was 17 years old then, and I had no idea it was called intermittent fasting. Yes, I do.
When you
Go
talk
ahead.
about intermittent fasting, what do you mean? I understand intermittent fasting means a limited eating window in the course of a day, but with your approach, how do you apply that meaning to it?
I would do 1 meal a day, and then I would drink water. And what I didn't know at the time then, what I do know now, is that I was drinking the right amount of water for how much I weighed, because I weighed 150 pounds. How you figure that out is you take, it's per ounce, is per body pound. So if I weigh 150 pounds, I would aim to have 75 ounces of water. And in this day and time, I would tell you not from the tap for a lot of reasons. And there's just chemicals in there that are not good for your brain. And my eating part of it, I would look at, if I ate, what time is my best time to eat meal? For me, my brain time, my best high performance brain time is in the morning. If I'm going to read something, I can read it, I can memorize it, I can go in and take a test, and I can ace it. If I study in the afternoon after I eat, because then you have a thing called alkaline tide. And alkaline tide is when you eat, your body becomes more alkaline. That's like in America, we have this like big turkey dinner, and you have a big Christmas dinner. When you eat all that food together, you want to go to sleep. So very few people look at like, how do I pair my foods to what I really actually need and still get foods that I like to eat and make it into my one meal a day. So I don't count calories and I don't count weight. I look at dress sizes. And we all know that dress sizes, like I would tell you now that I wear an 8, but I'm sure when I was modeling years ago in Boston, it was a 10 because they want you to psychologically think you're wearing a smaller size when you're not necessarily wearing a smaller size. That's a proven thing. But I ate really well. I ate very Mediterranean at that time also. And so I would have protein and vegetables. I stopped eating rice, bread, and pasta completely. And I found that when I ate pasta, I was telling a colleague of mine one time, we were in Sorrento on vacation, and she was sitting across from me. She had a practice in Rome. And I was telling her, I said, when I eat pasta, man, I said, I just don't feel good. I can feel it in my neck, like, especially over on this side over here. And she's gone, Patricia, she's a Romanian, and she's a very good, excellent chiropractor. She looked at me and she goes, "You're crazy." And so I ordered pasta puttanesca. And when I ate it, all of a sudden she's looking at me like she's seeing a ghost. And she goes, "Oh my God, I just saw your neck over here. It just changed." And she goes, "You can't eat pasta." She called the waiter over. She says, "Take this away." And she ordered different food for me. And and she said, "You can't eat that." And I said, I would always get tired. I didn't digest it. My glycemic index would go up, and I'm not diabetic. It's paying attention to how foods affect you sometimes, whether you get tired from it, you really feel bloated. A lot of people have digestive issues and they don't realize they have digestive issues because they're bloated and they just think it's normal. Oh, I'm older, so that happens. But it doesn't have to be that way. There's ways to combine foods so that your body's not stressed. And because if your body's not stressed, you're not going to experience stress. You're going to feel stress and you'll be able to handle stress in a very different way, taking the right kind of supplementations for you, eating the right kind of foods. So that one meal a day was my main meal. And then I would exercise. When I was 17 years old, my favorite exercise song was In-a-Gadda-da-Vida because it was 17 minutes. And it was 17 minutes of pure moving, the whole thing. And I still listen sometimes to In-a-Gadda-da-Vida when I'm walking because I want to do a 30-minute walk in 20 minutes because it's very uplifting and very motivating. And it has a certain beat that is very good for your heart and good for your brain. That is a 2-4-8 count. So when you're counting from one, the sequencing, you can hear it. If you count 1 and you count to 8, you will be in the same sequencing and your body will respond in the same fashion. So it's very good energetically for exercise for that reason.
Thank you for clarifying that. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're talking about limiting the time of eating, but also reducing your carbs. You talked about rice, bread, and pasta. I'm a terrible person when it comes to bread. Oh my gosh, I love fresh bread, but I know it does me no good. With regards to the balance between proteins and reducing some of those carbs, is it something in our Western diets these days that pushes us down that route? Is it marketing, self-regulation? What is it, in your opinion, that pushes us down these routes and enables us to ignore what clearly is screaming at us that's not good for us?
Part of it is self-regulation. It's like learning how to say no. My father taught me an exercise when I was chubby as a teenager. And he was sitting and he would get up and he'd push himself away from the table. And he says, "Do this exercise." And he sat down and he did it 5 times. And I said, "What is it?" And he said, "Pushing yourself away from the table." And he goes, "Take control." He had a very direct way of expressing himself. Self-regulation is one thing. I would say if you want to eat bread, wait till after your meal to eat the bread and have a protein on it. For instance, you could have bread with a little bit of butter on it and a protein, and then have it after, because that way, like in Italy, when they call it Scarpetta the piatra, and it's taking your bread and scraping the plate. So you have the carbohydrate, the oil, then you have the protein. So it's a really nice combination and it's simplistic and you won't eat so much. And then also having a large glass of water, having at least 6 ounces of water before you eat will make you feel fuller and more satiated. So if you put lemon juice in that water, it will help you digest your food better. So enough water in a glass like this, like here, with enough lemon, so just so it's slightly cloudy, and drink that. See? Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for clarifying that.
You know,
Dr. Pat, it's gone down the wrong way. Um,
shake your hands over your head.
I'm loving this advice. With regards to the mind-body connection, I was thinking around quality in, quality out, but also around the microbiome and the gut microbiome. We hear an awful lot about that these days. Do you have a position on that, or has your learning and understanding developed alongside some of this current understanding around the gut microbiome?
Coming from what we just talked about, one of the things I would have to say is looking at your ingredient list. And so if you want to up the chemistry of your body, you have to have the right proportion of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. If you don't, and if you're somebody who doesn't handle carbohydrates, then you're not metabolizing fats either. So if you're not doing that, then you don't have the microbiomes. If you're injuring your gut with the foods that you're eating because they are synthetic or they are from like the sources unknown, people go, oh, but I have yogurt. And it's less yogurt's a dairy product, and you have to know the source of the dairy product. Where does it come from? Where does that food come from is a question that I think a lot of people should start asking themselves and when they read a label. So in your country, in the UK, for instance, you have Heinz ketchup. Not that I would ever use it, but you have Heinz ketchup in the United States, and if you compare lists, there's foods and there's ingredients in Europe that cannot be used in Europe, but they're used in the United States. There's things in the States that people still use corn syrup. Why are you still using corn syrup? Why is it being sold? Sometimes some of those things baffle me. So when you're looking at microbiomes, if you have an injured gut, you can take all the probiotics that you want, but if your gut's injured, you got to fix the gut first because what you eat will leach into your blood system a lot sooner, which could create autoimmune diseases because of that, ultimately over a period of time. You want to look at how do those foods actually fit because you know when you've eaten the perfect meal. You feel like you feel happy, you feel satiated, and you're just going, "Oh, that was the best meal I had." Now, it isn't the same kind of meal as like your comfort food, because after you eat comfort food, you feel bloated, you want to go take a nap, or you're just like sitting there. But food should energize you and it should sustain your energy. If your energy drops, which would be normal if you had a lot of carbohydrates, that's that alkaline tide thing I talked about before, an hour and a half after, and then it crashes, then your body will follow suit. But you can avoid that by eating the proper amounts of proteins, the fats, the carbohydrates, and just saying no. If someone comes up because they don't want you to just to sit there, they want to give you bread, you can just tell them you're on a special diet and bread's out of the question. And so can you bring me something like some cottage cheese, which although it's dairy, it's high protein, or have a cheese plate that's antipasti, have something like that so that you're putting protein in your engines. Because if you don't start that, then what happens is your blood sugar goes all over the place and everything gets rather sluggish. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and I appreciate you explaining that. With regards to dairy, I've heard you talk about pros and cons around dairy. And I'm coming at this from a position of, in my family, we don't have any dairy in our house anymore. And this is something
Hmm.
that's happened over a few years now. And I think my wife will take the credit for that because her and my daughter were vegan about
Hmm.
10 years ago for quite some time. So we had no dairy in the house. I wonder if you could just elaborate around your thoughts and your position around dairy products more generally and the inflammatory response, perhaps.
A lot of people don't metabolize lactose, and there's also the milk fat. And a lot of times when you're having ultra pasteurized and homogenized, what you're drinking or eating is already dead. So you're eating dead food. So if you're around here where I live, where there's more cows than there are people, you have dairy farms that sell raw milk. Now I can metabolize raw milk, but I can't metabolize regular milk. And so it's like your body understands natural things for it, like butter. and having that higher quality butter if you're going to use it. So I don't have a problem with somebody using dairy, but if you don't tolerate it, then you have to eat something. You have to be able to take that dairy product and eat something with it that neutralizes it or complements it so it's easier to digest. If you actually ever looked at a lab sheet about what a glass of milk looks like, a lot of it's mucus. I don't remember the last time I've had a glass of milk. I just don't, I would never do that. But the people drink it or they put it on cereal. I always tell people if it's brown, don't eat it in the morning because you want to have things that are workable for you. Or if you're going to have dairy, have low curd, like goat cheese versus cow's milk products and that type of thing, and not anything that's processed. When somebody asked me about cheese the other day, I said, you can have cheese, just don't have it from this country, meaning the United States.
What are some of the clues that people are not tolerating things like dairy or other aspects of their diet? What are the clues that our body gives us?
It gives you pain, it gives you bloating. You just don't feel good. You're lethargic. I can remember a patient and her daughter being in a room one time, and the mother was describing something, and the daughter said, I have that too. And I said, how old are you? She was like 20 something. And I said, how long have you had that? 20 years? And you think it becomes a new normal. Just, oh, I'm getting older, so that's the way I'm supposed to feel. You have pain in your joints, your calves ache, you have cramps when you start sleeping. So you're looking at what types of macro and micronutrients are you deficient in. A lot of people say, oh, it's magnesium, but it's not always magnesium. It could be a combination of magnesium and calcium together. How did you suddenly start having quote unquote neuropathies in your feet? I've had a lot of patients here where I'm at right now when I'm helping this doctor out that they're saying they have neuropathies. And I said, let me work on you. And I adjusted this woman's foot the other day and was like clunk like this. And she's like, oh my God, that hurt. And I said, of course it hurt. It's been stuck for 30 years. She goes, I publicize you all over Facebook. I have 5 days of no pain after 20 years of being in pain in my feet. And I slept through the night. And she goes, do whatever you got to do. I don't care if it hurts. Just like me. But when you have muscles and you have imbalances in your body and it's not in harmony anymore, right side's not equal to left side, go stand on two scales next to each other and have someone else read it for you. You'll see how unbalanced you are. Then you have that. You've got to figure out how to recreate that harmony and that balance. And there's things like tripping, something simple like tripping, or you're always coughing. Someone goes, and do you have a cold? No. Then why are you coughing? Where's that dry cough from? Where's that wet cough from? What's going on in your system? Your body always will give you signs and symptoms. You just have to pay attention to it. And you intuitively know that something's not right. You just can't put your finger on it sometimes.
It's amazing that you say that. And I don't want this to become a one-to-one consultation about myself, but I do very much believe that the body keeps a score. I'm familiar with the book and I've talked about it several times on this podcast. And over a period of the last few years, through trauma and life experiences, I have found that certain things have held within me. Only recently, I've had back surgery that escalated so much in the last 3, 4 months. It got to a point where I wasn't even able to stand on my right leg. I can directly draw that back over many years of poor movement, poor stretching, overlifting, even something as innocuous as lifting a cup is when those things have really tightened for me. And as you were describing that, I was just thinking about my back being that barometer of well-being for me. Now, at the moment, touch wood, I feel better than I've felt for years, but that was through surgical intervention. I wonder if I'd have been under your care and under your hands, whether or not there were things that you could have done for me, perhaps.
Oh, I still can. And possibly. I've had people who deferred surgery. Of course, the orthopedic doctor didn't like me. But I just said, why would you go under a knife? After you go under a knife, you can't change things and they're going to want to go again and again. So when somebody has carpal tunnel on one side, they're eventually going to have carpal tunnel on the other side because your body's always accommodating. It has to adapt. If it doesn't adapt, you're dead. That's what happens when you stop adapting in life structurally. And you talk something that's very interesting that about where people store things. There's three brains that I talk to. The first brain is a brain, I call it the lizard brain or the primitive brain. And the second brain is the mammalian brain. And the third brain is the conscious brain. The mammalian brain is the one that stores everything that happens to us in our life, every moment, every event, so that when the other things come up, that brain says, oh, you've been through that before. Don't do that. Or don't lift that box up that blew your back out. That amount of weight is just not going to do it because you haven't fixed your back yet. And the primitive brain is like the saber-toothed tiger, the person who pulls out in front of you and you got to slam on the brakes. It's that reaction. It's like what to eat when you're hungry and that type of thing. It's just that listening to that primitive brain when you're actually hungry. Primitive brain and mammalian brain talk to each other all the time. Your conscious brain can change how your mammalian brain perceives things. So your conscious brain is where people do affirmations and they'll say, I'm healthy, vital, active, successful human being. Honesty, I give myself unselfishly to help others. That's what I say every day on my way driving to work. But then I ask a most important question at the very end. So if you do affirmations, this is crucial. You have to ask yourself, why? Why is it that I'm healthy? And your mammalian brain's going to scramble because it's going to say, oh, why is she healthy? Oh, she's healthy because she hydrates, and she's healthy because she exercises. She's healthy because she's got a good attitude. She's positive mental attitude and that mindset. She's healthy because she gets adjusted. She practices what she preaches. And your mammalian brain will do that. What happens with people is that when they have an instance, whether it's physical, mentally, emotional, spiritual, or social, it stores it in the mammalian brain. So if it's a bad experience, when you come up to the same circumstances, not necessarily the same thing, your body's going to respond exactly in the same way. So it stores that event exactly in the same place where the other event happened. And so until you break that and you do that through that conscious part of your brain, then what happens is it has the opportunity. Your mammalian brain will go, oh, that doesn't have to be like that because that happened the other day and that was a very successful event. So you focus on those successful events to change past mistakes, whether it's relationship, whether it's career, no matter what it is, so that you can elevate that aspect of your life. And you don't have to be, or what I said originally, you can live your life unapologetically.
That's wonderful. And in fact, to follow on from that point, I think it's living your life as an exclamation and not an explanation. That's
Oh,
what
that's
I
wonderful.
often have a mantra around. And that served me and the people around me quite well in life. There are mantras for sure. I think when you were talking about the lizard, mammalian, and the conscious brain, all of those three really resonate. The lizard, it's definitely the responsive fight flight response, isn't it, around that?
Mhm.
And we see that most immediately when we're under attack, as opposed to, I love the conscious mind and the affirmations. Those are things that also sit very centrally with me, with faith, with repetitive actions that I feel serve me on a daily basis. So there's a simple thing that I do every morning when I'm walking my dogs first thing in the morning. I always walk to the same spot and I look at a group of trees at the bottom of the bridleway where we live. There's a group of trees that were planted when Queen Victoria had her coronation in the UK. And they're in the shape of a V. You can see them from a plane when you fly overhead.
Mhm.
It's a very central point. And I always make an affirmation for the people that matter to me the most at that point. And that centers me in every single day. And if I don't do it, I feel different and incomplete at the beginning of the day. So the days that are the best are always those where I go to the V and do the affirmation every single day.
Can you touch them while you're doing the affirmation?
I can't physically touch them because they're about, let's say, a mile away. But what
Oh,
I
okay.
what I do is I've got a special ring and I kiss the ring and I look to the sky twice.
Ritual. Rituals are so important.
Yeah. That's
That's
what I
great.
do. That's what I do. And that's what serves me. But coming back to the mammalian brain, that's the protective piece, isn't it? It's the bit that we do to protect
Yeah.
ourselves. So when I'm loading the dishwasher and I know that my back's gone at certain points, what I do is I put my hand out on the work surface and use my other hand
Oh, you do
because
a
it's,
golfer's pickup.
oh,
It's called the golfer's pickup, actually. On some level, it has the same principle of having your hand on something and picking it up like this and protecting your back. Also, it would protect your back too, as if you had one foot ahead of each other. You know, in ballet, they start out like this and they have one step that's like your feet are one in front of the other like this. It creates stability in your pelvis. So it's not as easy. If someone comes up to you and bumps you, you're not going to be knocked over. But you can tell when you're not like that is when you shift from side to side. And when you're doing that, you're sharing, there's a big sharing force going on in your SI joints from your sacrum to your iliums, which translates right back up your spine. Just saying.
So I am rocking from side to side in my standing desk at the moment. When you look at Dr.
Don't do
Pat, when
that.
you look at the current healthcare landscape, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about being healthy and what that actually means these days? Because you've described one aspect of being healthy, or at least the approach that you take to health. Is that disconnected from what we're being told by other sources?
It is, I think, because I see people, I'm just going to use here because this is where I've been at for the last 6 months. And somebody will say to me, they have diabetes. And then I'll go to a party at their house or a get together. I do this at everyone's house, by the way, just in case I ever get to your house, I'm going to open the refrigerator and look in your medicine cabinet. But I just think of this guy. So I just got done sitting down with this guy a month ago and gave him an actual diet to follow. Everything I told him not to eat was in his refrigerator. And I'm thinking, how do you expect to get better if you like, and he goes, my doctor told me I didn't have to do that. What do you think I am? And I said, you've got to pay attention to your food because your food is what's nurturing your body. And if you can't nurture yourself, you can't nurture someone else. And you have to be able to nurture your systems so your organ systems all get in dysfunction. In my book, Why Are You Sick, Fat, and Tired? It's a book that's written, you can get it in Amazon in the UK also. But in the States, it's a book that's a system book about all the systems in your organ. It creates more awareness about what's working and what's not working. And if you take it and you're going like, I've got some questions about this, there's a link in there that you can schedule time with me that's complimentary, and I'll go over what your answers are so that you can get better information. Because when you get better information, you can make better decisions and you can choose a different path to go down, right?
I love that. I love that advice. I don't know whether you said it, but food is medicine, isn't it? I think in this day and age, it's very difficult for people in certain areas, certainly within the UK, and I think it's probably the same for the States, to find food in its natural and original state
Absolutely.
that's not translated into other ultra
That's
processed foods.
Hey, I can tell you, some people love me or they hate me when I go into a barista shop type thing. And I'll ask, because I like coffee. Coffee is an antioxidant. And so if there's some measures there, no mold. And I always like, where's your bean source? When people look at me like I've got 8 green eyes or something. And I'll say to them, I go, no, I need to know where it's sourced. And if it isn't, I make a conscious decision like, oh, I'm not going to still drink it. And is your water filtered? If your water's not filtered, I'm not drinking your coffee. And I do the same thing when I tell people about having up here is big farmland. There's atrazine, which is a hormonal disruptor, especially for women and like ovarian and for uterine type things and reproductive things. When frogs are subject to it, they become hermaphrodites. They're confused. And so that's a true story. And there's paper to support that and research to support that. But it's just like I was like, you got to know your source of what you're putting in your body. That's why food is medicine, but you've got to ask questions and you have to be willing to draw the line. Years ago, it's just like when I grew up, we had organic food until my mother brought home a Duncan Hines box, right? And my father said, what is this? And he goes, it's like eating hair. What he said was so gross. I never ate a cake after that again. I go, forget it. But it's just like I had access to Whole Foods. You grow something now. I was in a grocery store during COVID and I went in to go buy broccoli. And I hate broccoli. I eat it occasionally, but it's not my go-to food for a vegetable because I like other things that help support me. But I had two hands broccoli. This is a funny story, maybe. I had broccoli. One was organic and the other one was typical broccoli that you buy. And I'm just thinking to myself, wow, no wonder people are confused. They look exactly alike. Why would I spend an extra buck to go buy broccoli that is organic? And this woman came up to me, and this came to me in my dry sense of humor. She said, "You look very pensive about buying broccoli." And she said, "Are you meditating?" And I said to her, "No, I'm not meditating. I'm just thinking about how broccoli's like dating." And she just said, "Dating?" And I said, "Yes." I said, I go, "The traditional broccoli." And I said, "Is the guy who keeps you out to 2 o'clock in the morning, doesn't like you're eating snacks like pork rinds or something and drinking Budweiser beer." And I said, "And eating crappy food." And I go, "And you get in at 2 o'clock in the morning and then you got to go to work at 8 o'clock." And I said, "He gets to sleep in, you get to get up. If the covers fall off you, he doesn't care at all." And I but with the organic broccoli is the guy who loves to make sure you're nurtured, likes to make sure you're taken care of. The covers come off for you, he throws them back on. They come off, he throws them back on. Nothing is too much to make sure that you are nutritious and you're healthy and that you look as great as you always do. Because the girl who stays out to 2 o'clock in the morning is not going to look great. And you're going to look great all the time. And he loves that. So that's the organic broccoli. And she said, "Which one's the organic broccoli that you're holding?" And so I said, "Oh, it's this one here." And she grabbed it out of my hand. She goes, "Go get your own." And she goes, "Thank you for that." She goes, "I never understood why I should buy organic. Thank you." And she walked away. I never saw her again. And we just both laughed at the moment. But it's true though, because you have to take a look at what is it? You have to draw a line in the sand for yourself. If food is medicine, and if you knew somebody could help you even put it together even better, wouldn't it be a great idea to pair with that person so that you could eat better, think better, feel better, move better? It's just, for me, it is not something that I do for 21 days or a month because I'm doing it on a health kick. It's my lifestyle. And I help support people to have that same lifestyle so they can be 71 going on 41, right?
That is a rich and compelling insight, and I cannot better that example. I'm going to take that one away with me, Dr. Pat. That's just
Thank you.
absolutely wonderful.
Thanks.
What is the most important thing we haven't spoken about today?
Oh God, there's a whole list, I think. One of the things is how do you get started? What motivates somebody to want to elevate their life? A lot of times people get stuck in 10 like what's sad to me is watching somebody who you saw them like when they were 20 and they had an issue and you talked to them about it and they did something for a while, but they didn't do something for a long while. Or when it's just like I have surveys that I give people and to find out they're exactly in the same place that they were at before because they had to move home for a while or whatever, and they took themselves out of their environment. And instead of research, because it's too difficult to research what they had to do to sustain, they decided to go, "Oh, I can have this one time." And then that one time goes into another time. And then they're back with 10 pounds, 20 pounds back on them. And they haven't figured out, like, how did that happen? So I think really, like, how do you get that motivation to take action or to realize that and to be able to say something? And so that if you see something, say something. That was like a great line, but it was, I go, let's put it in context because a friend will tell you. It's just like when you go shopping for clothes with girls, you always bring your best girlfriend because they'll say, "Never wear that again." It's just never. And this would be the same thing with food. It's just what is it that makes it taste good? And I don't care if it tastes good. If it tastes good, do you feel satiated when you chew on it? Does it feel like, wow, this is the best thing I ate? I go all week long. It should be your every meal. It should feel somewhat like that, I think.
I
It's
think
like
that
how to do that. I think motivating people and giving them resources to be able to go, okay, so I have this issue. What's the solution? This issue. What's the solution? How can I do that and not feel like I'm punishing myself?
yeah, it definitely centers around motivation, as you say, but
Hmm.
understanding, I think, in the moment, your why that's going to serve you the longest and give
Hmm.
you the best return
Like,
for that
right.
decision.
Yeah. Do you want to play with your grandkids or you want to watch them?
I think that's a wonderful place with which we can move on to our quick fire round, Dr. Pat. And I'm wondering, what is the one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Oh, well, I wouldn't got married. But above and beyond that, I'm just joking about that. My younger self, I would have said, go to school sooner, go be a chiropractor sooner, and be outspoken. Say what you're thinking, forget about whatever they're thinking, because they're going to think whatever they're going to think anyway, whoever that is.
That's wonderful. What are the top three qualities you value most?
Honesty, integrity, and action.
What is your favorite thing outside of work?
Cooking. I'm a foodie and travel.
And what's your go-to dish?
My go-to dish is salad. I'd make a really awesome salad.
With broccoli.
No, no. I love
No.
tomatoes for salad. The Greeks make a salad called haricchia salad. If I'm not pronouncing it right, I don't know. But it's the insides of the salad. It's not the lettuce part. I use lettuce as a dressing or as a topping. So I like the other parts, like the radishes and the tomatoes and the onions and the garlic and the carrots shredded, beets shredded, and most of it raw. And then just with topped with a lean protein.
Fabulous. And finally, what is your number one golden rule in life and in business, Dr. Pat?
Be true to yourself.
Thank you so much. We've covered so much ground in this conversation, and it's been fascinating to hear how in your career and your life you've applied those lessons to the decisions that you made throughout those 71 extraordinary years of yours.
Yes, I learned how to lead by example.
And you're absolutely leading by example and speaking your truth. I commend you absolutely on that. It's been an absolute delight to get to know you a little bit better today, Dr. Pat. And I've really enjoyed welcoming you on Pharma Prescribed. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure anytime.